Good afternoon, and welcome to the steps you should be taking right now to prepare your fiscal year 2021 budget. If you're anything like me, you're probably getting tired of the word uncertainty. We're hearing it every day on the news and social media and in conversations with friends and colleagues. Uncertainty is the bane of the finance professional. We do everything we can to predict change, plan for variables, and eliminate uncertainty. Today, however, it's become an increasingly difficult task. It's almost impossible to predict what tidbit in tomorrow's news cycle will send the markets careening up or down, when the states are opening or closing to business, or when the next hotspot will flare up. Some finance professionals are weathering this storm better than others, though. Those with well thought out processes and the right tools at their disposal have found it easier to pivot because they have three critical things: trust in the numbers, a modeling solution, and collaboration with stakeholders. Today, we're going to provide you with 5 concrete steps that you should be taking right now to prepare your FY'21 budget. Steps that will reinforce these critical differentiators and should help you eliminate uncertainty to address the needs of your organization, even in the midst of this current economic, health, and social crisis. Before we begin, I'd like to take a few minutes to introduce today's webinar team and go over some housekeeping notes. This webinar is brought to you by Business Solution Partners. BSP has a 30-year history of providing high-level financial and operational consulting and technology-based solutions to mid-market and enterprise companies in all 50 states. We are an Oracle NetSuite 5-star solution provider partner, a Workday Gold partner, a HubSpot Gold partner, and took home AvidXchange's coveted Partner of the Year award in 2019. We represent a wide variety of software and process solutions supported by training to ensure that your company succeeds in the modern business environment. We're a global software consultancy with a local presence in your backyard. From our humble beginnings with a single office in New York, we've expanded our footprint across the U.S. to include 4 offices in California, as well as locations in Connecticut, Florida, Illinois, Minnesota, Montana, New Jersey, Nevada, Massachusetts, Virginia, and more. We're moving business forward with the tech stack designed for growth. Our consultants and professional service providers support mid-market and enterprise companies with software strategies, implementations, integrations, custom development, training, and support. We work with Oracle NetSuite in conjunction with Workday Adaptive Planning and HubSpot to help companies transform their approach to market. Speaking of our recordings, we here at BSP love sharing educational and informative content with our growing audience. I personally encourage you to check out our YouTube channel and our LinkedIn page. Be sure to like and subscribe to receive regular updates, including access to white papers, webinars, blog posts, and much more. We've made it really easy by providing you with some custom links. Just type in our website, www.bspny.com/YouTube or /LinkedIn to be taken directly to our social pages. My name is Craig Cook. I am the Chief Marketing Officer for Business Solution Partners. Today, you'll also hear from 3 members of our Workday team. Chris Adamski and Lynne Jenkins are our co-practice managers, leading a growing team of Workday Adaptive Planning specialists in charge of implementations, professional services, training, and strategy. And Rich DiPalma is our Senior Account Executive for Workday. Our guest speaker today is Jay Baier, Director of FP&A for Great Expressions Dental, an organization with close to 300 locations worldwide that has a complex financial needs. Jay will be speaking with us about how he has pivoted in 2020 and is preparing for 2021 through the use of the Workday Adaptive Planning platform. One last nod to our webinar coordinator, Michelle Caronley, whose behind-the-scenes work makes all of our webinars possible. On behalf of the entire team assembled here today, welcome. Before I introduce our first speaker, we have to acknowledge a branding change. Adaptive Insights, a Workday company, is now officially Workday Adaptive Planning. So our team has been working with Adaptive for many years, and this transition is one that we're going to have to get used to. So throughout this presentation, if we confuse the name Adaptive Insights or Workday Adaptive Planning, please appreciate that we're really talking about the same thing. All right, so it's my sincere pleasure to introduce you to our dynamic duo, co-practice managers for Workday Adaptive Planning, Lynne Jenkins and Chris Adamski. Both Lynne and Chris joined our organization in 2019, coming on board to spearhead our growing Workday practice. Chris brings with him a deep knowledge of finance business processes, software development, and testing methodologies. He holds multiple Workday certifications for the implementation and customization of the Workday Adaptive Planning platform. And Lynne comes directly from Oracle NetSuite, where she was a principal consultant working with Adaptive and NetSuite planning and budgeting. Her hands-on experience with complex financial solutions is the perfect complement to Chris's experience, and together they are helping finance teams discover the benefits of streamlined financial operations. Chris, Lynne, what do you guys have in store for us today?
Well, thanks, Craig. For those of you on a calendar fiscal year, January 2021 may seem a long way off. Even though it's 6 months away, now is the time to start thinking about the budget process. The key is to begin with the end in mind. Today, Chris and I will walk you through a checklist of things you need to consider for the upcoming budget season. Then we will show you how to apply those steps in Adaptive. Now I'll turn things over to Chris to get started.
Yeah, thanks, Lynne. So as you all get a little closer to your budget cycle for next year, there are a number of things you should be asking yourself and your team. I mean, if you look at the big picture, you could boil all this down into two main questions. What inputs do you need for your plans, and what do you need to get out of them? And as you look closer and break down those questions a bit further, you'll tend to land on these steps. Once you're able to follow these steps and have solutions in place, you'll be more than able to produce a viable, well-reaching plan. So let's go ahead and start breaking down each one of these, starting with step one.
Step one, know your audience and stakeholders. Who are the people in your organization that should be involved in the budget process? Over time, that list may have changed as your business process has changed, so it's good to know who's who. By getting to know your stakeholders, those in the C-suite, department heads, budget owners in sales, production, purchasing, HR, and other departments, you can determine the results, metrics, reports, and analytics that they want to see at the end of the budget cycle, and therefore the data and inputs that they need to provide in order to get those needed results. Once you've identified who the stakeholders are, then you can ask these questions in the checklist. When was the last time you met with them? Is this the first time you'll meet with this manager? Or does this manager submit the same budget every year? Do you have their latest requirements? There may be some new KPIs that the manager needs to capture this year. And 3, do they have the correct system access? Does this manager have the right security and permissions to enter the required input and report on the necessary outputs? Does this manager need access to salary data or need to be restricted from salary data? So now that we know who the audience is, Chris is going to check our data.
Yep. So knowing your audience is vitally important. You can't know your data without knowing your audience, right? So knowing your data will get you to a place where you can more readily serve your stakeholders, and it also ensures that you have the best reporting available for them. But how do you get there? We always recommend having regular check-in meetings with your stakeholders, so you'll always know what they'll need. And what types of data and the granularities they need of that data, and where to even get it all from. This will keep you always in the know. And it's also going to enable you to build in new integrations or processes early on instead of at the last minute, or worse, during the middle of budget season. Knowing your data will enable you to know whether a new request for data can be met or if new development is needed on an integration. And the last, but the most important things to check if there are any new entities, any new departments, GL accounts, dimensions, or anything else that might require you to add new elements to your reports or into your integration. So Lynne, what's step 3?
Chris, step 3 is analyze your current events and market conditions. Now that we know our data and our stakeholders, how do you manipulate the data set from your stakeholders to adjust for what's going on externally? Let's look at our checklist. Have we considered all of the external and internal factors impacting our business? Some of the questions you need to ask are, what are the environmental, legal, political, economic, and social factors that are impacting my business or may have a future impact? Has the demand for any of my products or services changed? Or is there a merger or acquisition on the horizon? The next question is, do we have the right versioning process to capture multiple what-if scenarios? You should be able to create high, mid, and low, or version 1, 2, and 3 scenarios with changes to revenues, expenses, or cash flow, and be able to compare the outcomes of those scenarios. Lastly, can our data set be changed easily with additional assumptions and drivers to account for variable market conditions? Changing assumptions and drivers in those various scenarios I just mentioned should easily propagate to all departments and roll up correctly to the consolidated level. Now that we know what we need for our budget inputs, Chris will share what we need for our reporting.
All right, so step 4, ensure your reports are curated and they're telling the right stories. And we've seen it all before as consultants, but the scenario that gives people the most headaches is having too many reports. I mean, it's okay to have a lot of reports, and the term a lot is arguably relative, right? But what really causes issues is having too many of the same report, or a lot of reports in a list that just haven't been used in a few cycles. This happens a lot when you get multiple requests for similar reports without really knowing what you already have in your pile. This causes duplicative reports or reports with similar structures but end up telling a very different story. So go through this checklist and find out if you have the right report for the right people and at the right granularity, and whether or not they are consistently telling the right story for your organization. Put together a data dictionary if you need to that lists out all of your reports and the data points included in each. The more detailed, the better. This will give you a view into ways where you may be able to reuse or purge some reports, or to fix inconsistencies in what stories your data points are telling. So moving on to step 5 now. Step 5 just brings it all together to build a seamless, logical process that helps tell your story in the right way for the right people. You can do this by working backwards from your desired completion date, and by defining who needs to be involved and when, and going back to the big picture idea from earlier in our slides, defining what the touch points are in the process, the inputs and the outputs. So with all this said, let's see what some of this might look like in an actual planning tool. So we're going to go ahead and switch over to adaptive planning and show you a couple of things. So what we're doing here in this particular demo instance of adaptive planning is we're bringing in actuals data from a few different data sources to feed into our income statement, balance sheet, GL accounts, and into some cube sheet accounts where we're tracking project time for consultants. And some of you may be doing this in some other systems for different functions and stuff like that. But what we want to test for here or in your systems is, does your connection to your source system still work? And when was the last time it ran successfully? And if it didn't run properly, what do we need to do to get it fixed? So in Adaptive Insights here, I could log in, go into our main menu, go into integrations, design integrations. And one of the beautiful things in here that we have in Adaptive specifically is that as we go through and we check all this stuff, and if something isn't right, your team can fix it. You don't need an IT team resource most of the time to correct most of these issues. So what I want to check first before our budget season ramps up is our data integrations here. And just a quick primer on how all this works is we really have 3 steps into creating an integration. We have a data source here that physically connects into our source ERP system or CRM system, whether it's out in the cloud or on-prem. This is the mechanism by which Adaptive will connect into the systems, download the data, get it staged for us, and allow us to massage that data where our loaders can then take that data and, using mapping rules that we could define on our own team, load that data into Adaptive Insights. And then we take all that data and wrap them into tasks where we could automate the loading of that data on an hourly basis, weekly, monthly, whatever your business requirements are for the loading of data. So what we want to do here first is, first of all, just check to see whether our connection is good or not to our source system. So in this demo, I'm going to test our connection to NetSuite. And again, without having a need for an IT team resource to guide us through this, we could just go in here and do it ourselves, and I could test the connection. And what I'm looking for here is a successful connection. So I know that our credentials are set up, our tokens and access keys and everything that give us the handshake between systems is good to go. And we're able to go in and download data and bring it into Adaptive. And then so now, once we know we have a solid connection, what we want to know now is how often or when was the last time this ran successfully. So in our tasks here, again, tasks are just containers of our data loaders that we could automate to run. In this case, in this demo, I have it running every morning at 6 a.m. before I get into work. So I know that when I get in, I should have the freshest data. But if it's been a while, or if you know of new things that are going on in your source system, you want to go in and check to see when was the last time that this ran. And sure, you could set up notifications to email you when it doesn't run successfully, or even when it does run successfully, you'll know. I want to go in here and check the logs. Again, without needing an IT team resource, I can know when my connections are running or my loaders are running well. So what I want to check here again is if it completed successfully, and it's been completing successfully pretty routinely. It looks like there was a failure a couple of days ago, which we addressed. And this is what we want to see, if it's successful. But if it fails, what we want to know now is why did it fail? And a lot of times, like I said, going back into one of our earlier slides in knowing your data, is knowing whether there were new GL accounts or levels or dimensions or any other elements that might break the loaders here. And a lot of times, 99% of the time, it has to do with our mapping of certain things. So when we have new GL accounts or levels that are created in our ERP system or whatnot, and they aren't subsequently created in Adaptive, Adaptive just doesn't know where to map that new data to. So if there are any mapping issues, we, again, without needing any other resources, we could go in and address that immediately within a few seconds here. If there were anything that was that weren't mapped properly, we could go in and address that here. We would see some numbers here, and we would be able to get to the area where we can actually map that. So that's good to go. We have a solid connection. We have good mappings. It looks like. One extra thing to talk about here in our column mapping is Adaptive expects us to map source amounts to somewhere in Adaptive to the amount. And we need to map accounts and levels at the very least. Everything else here is optional. But again, getting to the data granularities that you need, you'll want to map to different dimensions like vendors, project, clients, revenue segments, sales territories, you name it. If it's available in your data, in your ERP system or other source system like a CRM, like Salesforce, if it's there, we can map that from our source to something in Adaptive and let you have a finer granularity to get to the data that you need. And again, without any IT resource, if you need to add in more, if it's available in your source ID column, then you can map that to your planning column in Adaptive Insights on your, which is great. So the last thing that I'll mention here is now that we have a solid connection, our loaders are running every night. I just want to make sure that we're loading in the data for the right time periods that everybody's expecting it to. So I could check my default time periods in here and just see how that's defined. So when the loaders run, the default time periods is set to January 2020. And we're actually loading in fresh data as of when the loaders are ran. So we have it set to dynamic with a 0-month backwards offset. So that means that we're getting the latest and greatest data as of 6 a.m. every morning. So I know that if I look at a P&L or AR AP schedules, I can know that I have the yesterday's data in the system. So let's switch gears here a little bit, and I'll let Lynne take it from here to show you a little bit more about the 5 steps on the planning and reporting side. So I'm going to stop sharing here, and then you can go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Chris. So now that Chris has verified that the foundation and adaptive is set up properly, we can set up our budget timeline, assign tasks, update our assumptions, and review our reports. I'll start by creating a new budget process to track everyone's progress as they work collaboratively on the budget. I'll create a task and call it 2021 budget process. And I'll set the target date to be October 15th, since the board is going to start reviewing on November 1st. I'll create my first task and call it update headcount and ARR assumptions. And I'll assign this task to an individual, to my sales manager, and I'll direct this to his dashboard, so it will take him directly to his sales manager dashboard for our Budget 21 version, and I'll give him a deadline of September 10th. So I'm starting with the end in mind. My next task, I'll call it Submit Sales Budget. And again, I'll assign this to my sales manager. And I'll direct this to his workflow so it can take him directly there for him to submit the budget. And I'll give him a deadline of September 15th for this one. So now I'll log in as the sales manager to complete these tasks. So as a sales manager, I'll go to Processes and select 2021 Budget Process. So the two tasks are here. I'll start with the first task. That's taking me to the dashboard. And in active dashboards, my notes, my sheets, my graphs are all in one place. And I can see my revenue by my sales region and by my product. I see here that HR has entered a note that says that we're pushing out all hiring to Q2. So I'm going to add a new employee. I'll copy this row down and call this one New Hire 2. And I'll start this person in August. And then I'll start someone else. I'll call this one New Hire 3. And I'll start this person in October in Q4. And I'll save the changes. And we'll see how those changes impact my headcount column graph. So now by the end of the year, my sales team is up to 13 people. Now I need to update my annual recurring revenue, ARR numbers. Our team needs to bring in at least $165 million next year with a stretch goal of $170 million. Right now we're at $161.5. I'll make some adjustments to my North American North region and for product 1. So I'm going to adjust the number of new deals, so new logos. I'm going to add 10 new logos per month. And then I'm also going to increase the average ARR per deal. So the average amount per deal, I'm going to increase that by $5,000 per month. And then I'll save the changes. And if I go back and look at my total sales team, so good. We made our target, the 165 target, we're at 167.8, so great. So now I can check that task as being completed. and then I'll go to my next task. So now I need to submit my budget. I'll click on my top level there, and I'm going to enter, I'm done, so that my COO will know that I have completed my task, and I'll click Submit. Yes, I want all of my regions to be approved at the same time, and now it's showing that it's submitted for review by my COO. And I can click this task as being complete. So now that once your budget is all entered, you can use Office Connect to view your budget. Office Connect is an Excel add-in that allows you to keep the formatting of your Excel presentation while seamlessly updating the report with the latest adaptive data. This is the formatted FY'21 budget P&L. You'll notice the company logo and all the native Excel functionality is available. I'll update the elements for any new GL accounts, any new levels, and dimensions that may have been added since the last time the report was generated. Now I'll update the groups to dynamically add any newly created GL accounts to the report. You'll see here that test account was added to the operating expenses section, so that account must have been added since the last time the report was generated. Last, I'll refresh my report. And you'll see the subscription revenue is reflecting the $167.8 million, just like on the dashboard. So now you can print your formatted report. And Office Connect can also work with Word and PowerPoint for fully integrated presentations. Now that you know how to prepare for this budget cycle, I'll turn things over to Rich DiPalma, who will share more about Adaptive and will introduce you to our speaker, Jay Baier. Rich has spent 3 years at Adaptive Insights as a regional account manager, and now he heads up our business development pipeline for Adaptive Planning product as our senior account exec. Take it away, Rich.
Thank you, Lynn. Appreciate that. So I think it's important to jump in to the discussion, understand why business solution partners decided to partner with Workday. Having a choice of solutions out there, we went with the market leader. I think it's very, very important to understand why Workday is so widely regarded in the industry. First off, Workday has more customers than all of the other cloud solution providers in this space combined. All Workday Adaptive Planning customers, in fact, are on the same modern in-memory cloud application. And what that means is all customers are always on the right version. Too often we struggle as to which version we have in our company, who's on which version, are we in sync? With Adaptive, that's never a concern. It's on the cloud, always on the cloud, and you're always current. Workday is very, very, very vested, I know this firsthand, in customer success. All customers of Workday are assigned a dedicated customer success manager, solely focused on maximizing the value of any investment in the solution. Adaptive, as mentioned earlier, was acquired by Workday in 2018 and continues to be headquartered in the heart of the Silicon Valley with offices around the world. What's very important is, regardless of which analyst you look at, they all rank Workday Adaptive Planning as the leading solution in this space. We're the leader in the Gartner's Magic Quadrant, the Nucleus report, as well as the latest Forrester Wave. You can state quite succinctly with 100% certainty that Workday Adaptive Planning is the leader in the space across all analyst reports. Very understanding where you are in your process, as Lynn and Chris showed you, is very, very important. The vision for planning that Workday Adaptive Planning, it's going to take me a while to get used to that. It's been 5 years. Is really a 3 C's and a 4th C being connected process where collaboration, which involves all of your folks in the organization working off the same environment, comprehensive, it allows you to plan on all of your components, which Jay will talk about in shortly, about not only your financial metrics, but also operational metrics, materials, raw materials, and workforce. As we know, headcount, labor is the most opposing figure at cost that we have in our organization, and it's continuous. It's not a one-time process. It's an ongoing process of rolling forecasts that allow you to act in real time as needed by your organization, all connected with one system for all of your actuals, plans, and reports. Now, Craig talked a little bit about BSP at a high level earlier. I'd like to add a little more flavor to that. So Business Solutions Partners is a 30-year plus company based in New York City with offices around the globe, around the country, as Craig mentioned. We are financial management technology experts, specifically focused on technologies in the cloud and to help improve the performance of your company and how to track performance and metrics and make sure you're driving forward. Quite a bit of experience across the board. We've done over 200 successful implementations of the Workday Adaptive Planning platform, similar to NetSuite, the numbers. And our expertise is centered around several verticals, including software and technology, finance, manufacturing, and healthcare. Here's a small sample of some of the successful implementations we've done across verticals with adaptive planning. We are uniquely qualified with a broad and deep expertise in financial systems, holding multiple qualifications and certifications with Workday, other financial technology solution software, and governing boards such as the ISACA. Our staff of accountants, CPAs, CFPs, CISAs, and finance executives and technology experts do understand the role that software plays in modern business and how to best leverage that technology to meet your specific needs. We've been recognized by Workday and Oracle as a premier partner, having passed all required certifications to implement, customize, and support their solutions. A couple of quick overviews of some success we've had. This is a leading emergency medical management firm that, prior to working with Adaptive, was struggling with a manual Excel spreadsheet process that really didn't have a lot of visibility into how they were doing. They had various services that they wanted to offer, and they had no way to really understand how each service was performing, how they were performing holistically, or really how they were going to move forward in tracking the visibility. Since bringing in Adaptive with the help of Business Solutions Partners, they have an automated feed from their NetSuite ERP and all other data sources that ensures that all their numbers are always current. That data, being in that single platform, allows them to slice by the service, by a provider, or by any dimension or attribute, or really anything they want, any question they want to ask, they get the answer in real time or as needed. Reporting, very important, as reports are shared around the organization, is now being used across the organization to visualize the results. Everyone's on the same page when they're talking about what we need to do. Everyone's looking at the same numbers, and they can now mark it per service line and know how each of those service lines is performing in real time. This has really been a game changer for VEP. Tamara is a leading big data. So think about the old ETL products, but this is specifically designed for the cloud. Very, very, very fast growing organization based in the Boston area that really needed a granular look into their performance of the organization for better decision making. They did not, similar to BEP, have the visibility. They really lacked the inability to understand which customers were most profitable, which customers maybe were not, and how they were going to move forward, causing them to miss some deadlines and targets due to their processes taking too long to get the information out and really causing some pain. They really to be made more proactive. After successfully bringing in adaptive planning with the help of Business Solution Partners on time and on budget, they now have a single source of truth across all their business systems, a broader and deeper view of their data for better decision making. Most importantly, they've automated all of their processes for that manual time taking process that was speaking before, and allowing them more time to do the analysis, which is really important. They now know in real time the health of their business, guided path to aligning results and plans that can get them where they need to be across the organization. Lastly, before turning it back over to Craig for the discussion with Jay Baier, we wanted to offer this very interesting and unique offer here. It's perfect time as we're looking at next year's budgets to try Workday Adaptive Planning. We've gotten approval to offer a trial of the planning software. This is the market-leading software, regardless of who you look at. And not only are you going to get the trial, Business Solutions Partners will give you support as you get up and running, offer some assistance and some guided mentoring to get you really familiar with the system and assist your organization, all at no cost. You can see for yourself why this solution is leading in the market and really help you understand how you can bring this in or a solution into your organization that can really help drive change positively for your teams. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Craig Cook, who will be having a fireside chat Q&A with Jay Baier. Jay is the director of FP&A for Great Expressions Dental Centers. He's responsible for overseeing a team of financial professionals charged with ensuring that Great Expressions aligns their performance with their strategic plans. I've known Jay for about 4 years now. Before Jay was at Great Expressions, he was at Stanley Black & Decker, where he served in a variety of operation roles using some legacy vendors. A BA in finance from the Indiana University with real estate as well. Jay, Craig, take it away. Appreciate it.
All right. Jay and I are going to start up our video here. Hey, Jay.
Hey there, how are you guys?
Hey, nice to see you again. And
Yeah,
thank you for
for
taking
having
the
me.
time today to, discuss this important, need to plan differently for FY'21 and to take into account what's been going on, in the marketplace and in the globe today, right?
Absolutely.
So before we dive in, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit more? Tell us a little bit about Great Expressions Dental, and then we'll get down to it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys for having me. I quantify myself as an adaptive power user, and I love talking about Workday Adaptive Planning. So really, really excited to be here and share my experience with you guys. I have been at Great Expressions for about 3 years. I was hired as a financial analyst and have quickly moved up my career path. I became the manager of FP&A over a short period of time, and within the last 6 months have been promoted to the director of FP&A. And before coming to Great Expressions Dental Centers, as Rich DiPalma said, I worked for Stanley Black & Decker, which is a large conglomerate of about $15 billion. And
yeah, I think that's a well-known name out there, right?
It's everything from automatic doors to coffee makers. So it's hard to miss the Black & Decker brand name running around any store you walk into. So I've been at Great Expressions for about 3 years, and Great Expressions is located here in Southfield, Michigan. And Great Expressions is a dental service organization and currently supporting over 250, almost 300 locations in 10 different states around the United States. We service multiple specialty offices, everything from general hygiene to orthodontia to specialty dentistry, ranging from oral surgery to pediatric services. And we really focus on, providing a quality patient experience at an affordable price. So
Awesome. So Jay, again, thank you for your time today. And we're all here talking about this FY'21 budget and the steps that our audience should be taking right now to prepare. I think Chris and Lynne, did a fantastic presentation, and it contains a lot of best practices that a good finance team would want to follow in preparing their budget in any year, right? Not just in a year where there's some uncertainty involved. But right now we're dealing with kind of a huge set of variables and this palpable fear of the unknown. So my first question to you is, what's different about preparing your budget this year, and how are you taking global events into consideration?
absolutely. So I think Chris and Lynn both brought up a great point. It's very, very easy to do what a finance professional would call scenario planning. So adaptive allows me to have the ability to create multiple different versions of a budget if I'd like to. And when I have multiple different versions, I'm allowed to or able to change different drivers in different budget versions and easily present different scenarios to the leadership team that I work with on a daily basis.
Wow. So, basically what you're saying is you're imagining a scenario where, let's say, one of the states where you have locations in closes due to COVID-19, right? And you're
Absolutely.
able to then, pull a lever in the platform and say, what would happen if that happens? I'm going to get zero revenue. I'm going to have zero expenses. Maybe I'm not sending supplies to that company. So there's a huge effect on not just the labor, but the bills and the supplies and every input that goes into that. So you're saying that with scenario planning and with modeling, you're able to account for the effects of that closure and then make decisions based on that without actually going into your GL or without actually going into like, the budget itself and making changes, which are then going to cause a ripple effect. You're talking about doing it in a sandbox almost, right?
Absolutely. And even the level of granularity that you're able to plan on by changing one driver, for example, the flow of patients within a state. You're not just affecting the revenue, but you're affecting the staffing and, for example, in our business, the drugs and supplies. And, this doesn't just impact, the operators and the dentists in our organization. There are many teams that feed off of the outputs of my models that when I'm able to give them reforecasts within in a couple hours, we're able to have teams react quicker and faster than we ever have been able to before.
Wow. So let's digress a little bit. So you're doing this with the help of Workday Adaptive Planning tools. What did the picture look like before you onboarded with that at Great Expressions? What were you using and what were the challenges that you were facing?
Yeah, so the first few weeks at Great Expressions was my worst nightmare. I came from a large organization that used Hyperion. I was very familiar with their version of Office Connect. I'm going to compare it to, it's called HFM, which is comparable to Adaptive Office Connect. And I was surprised by the lack of visibility to how they would budget and report at Great Expressions. And there was tremendous issues with version control, sharing budgets in a timely manner, and being able to look at information in different views. The one thing about budgeting is a budget is usually old the hour after you create it. And one thing with Great Expressions is we're a very, very large organization with a very, very small finance team. Before I came in, the CFO was the only budget contributor in the whole organization. And, as I mentioned, we have offices over 10 different states, 250 plus offices, and we have several thousand providers in our portfolio ranging from hygienists to dentists. So if you think about the level of granularity that we're planning at, it's not only at the office level sometimes, but it's at the provider level. And as you have changes on a daily basis in your organization, your budgets can constantly move. The concept of a reforecast or a rebudget was nearly impossible, but Adaptive Insights or Workday Adaptive Planning has allowed me to completely change the thought process around budget season and has allowed me to recast a large organization like ours in the matter of hours.
I mean, that's incredible. Just knowing the scale of the organization, being able to have that, granularity, but then also to be able to see it at the 30,000 foot perspective, and everywhere in between, to drill down all the way into, one particular supply chain to one particular office on one product that they need to do their business, all the way up to how are my almost 300 locations operating in harmony together, right? You also expressed in our conversation prior to this webinar that you're running many different business models in a sense, right? So not only do you have these complexities of the scale and the layers of your organization, but at each office, there might be an orthopedist and a general practitioner and an anesthesiologist, and each one of those is a very different type of business, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I had mentioned earlier, our previous finance teams like to use a one-size-fits-all budgeting methodology. And Adaptive Insights has allowed me to, with the flick of a button, change back and forth between different budget methods, whether it be a bottoms-up headcount FTE model, next to a percentage of revenue model. Adaptive Insights has allowed me to be very, very flexible with how I model. And, just to give everyone on the call a little insight, there has been a tremendous amount of, I shouldn't say tremendous, but there has been leadership turnover in our organization where I have had a few different CFOs that all speak very, very different languages. They want to budget and forecast differently and are talking about the business differently. And Adaptive Insights has allowed me to fit their needs very, very quickly.
That's awesome. So I know we've established the effect of Adaptive on the finance team. You're reporting up to the CFO, you're making these decisions, and specifically in your FP&A department, the planning and the analysis side of the equation. But you also expressed to me in our pre-webinar call that there are other areas of the business that are seeing a lot of benefit from the platform. Can you elaborate on some of the operational enhancements and some of the other, let's say, value added wins? So it's not just the finance team who's getting benefit out of this system.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, COVID-19 over the last 3 months has put many organizations around the globe in an interesting situation. On a daily basis, Great Expressions love to manage revenue only. And COVID-19 has put a tremendous amount of pressure on us to not only manage daily revenue, but daily expenses. And we have data warehouses that housed many different data sets of revenue and Chronos, which is our timekeeper, and other invoicing. And Adaptive Insights has allowed me to cleanly merge many different sources of information and not only give our operators insights into daily revenue, but allow them to control their costs at a by employee level. So we have roughly 3,000 plus employees that are working flexible schedules. Many people compare or would think that, our business model is very similar to a fast food restaurant where we're open 7 days a week and we have the same number of providers and the same number of employees every single day. Well, when you have many, many specialists in our organization, they are moving around to different offices. Some specialists work 2 days a week, 4 days a week, 6 days a week. And there's, as I mentioned earlier, there's not a one KPI fits all staffing metric for a company like ours. And using adaptive dimensions and the Office Connect reporting power, we've been able to help our operators micromanage their office labor and costs on a daily basis instead of just waiting for the month-end financials to be presented by our controller and accounting team.
Wow, it's just a whole layer of support to the individual offices, especially during a time of crisis, that just wasn't available to you. That's
Absolutely.
A real success story.
Yeah, we were always looking 30 days back. We historically took about 2.5 business weeks to close the books. But with COVID-19 and having the serious need to manage costs and labor on a more serious basis, Adaptive Insights has allowed us to look, almost real time to see how our operators are managing staff around the whole country. So it's really, really awesome, and it's really exciting for us.
Very cool. So, it sounds like you and your colleagues are spending a lot more time doing your job, right? Analyzing the data, problem solving, dealing with, you know, the day-to-day aspects of what you need to be doing, and not doing administrative tasks like data entry and validation and playing what I like to call spreadsheet roulette, right? Where like,
Absolutely.
what number is going to come up today? Wow. Awesome. So Jay, you know, you and I have already talked for a long time about adaptive. We had several calls preparing for this, and I know you and I could just chat on for hours. But since we are getting to the top of the hour here, and this was only supposed to be an hour-long webinar, why don't we close out with, you know, what are some best practices or recommendations that you would make to your colleagues and your peers today regarding preparing for FY'21?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, my number one piece of advice is start simple. Adaptive is a very, very powerful tool with a little bit of creativity, can do limitless number of things. You know, I'm very, very young in my career, and I came into a very, very complex organization. When I implemented adaptive, I wanted to tackle the world, and I quickly learned in adaptive that sometimes simple is better. And because adaptive is so flexible, it allows you to change budget methodologies as you go. You know, I want to say I put a stake in the ground at the end of my implementation, but you know, the team of analysts and I are constantly improving adaptive and continuously improving how we're building new forecasts and budgets. And, you know, I think there's a tremendous number of people in our organization that are really, really worried about budgeting for 2021 because, you know, we've been somewhat reforecasting every week in our organization. And with a lot of confidence, you know, I can go home every night and know that my budget for 2021 is pretty much already done.
There's a
So
big smile. I don't know, you can't see yourself, but a big smile came across your face when you said that. My budget for 2021 is basically done. Very
absolutely.
satisfying, huh?
Makes me feel
Awesome.
really good.
Awesome. Well, Jay, I can't express enough how wonderful this has been. I really enjoyed talking with you. I really hope that our audience today could glean some insights. I'm going to ask you to stick around. We're going to open up the floor to Q&A, and we're going to launch our closing poll now. Let me just, we're both going to shut off our video, and we're going to do that screen share again. And you guys get to see our last pretty slide for the Q&A. Okay, I think everybody can see that now. So that wraps up our presentation today, and the floor is now open to questions. So check out that Q&A interface in the Zoom platform, or you can find the chat screen. You can even raise your hand if you have a question, and we'll try to answer it. I do see a question here. First of all, let me bring back Chris and Lynn and Rich to join Jay and I for this Q&A session. Welcome back, guys. Are you there?
Yes, we're here.
We're
Excellent.
We're here.
All right, I have a question. In the demo, you assign tasks to a manager. Yes, we saw that. Can you assign tasks to a group or to a department?
Yes, I'll take that one. Yes, you definitely can. So you have the ability to assign tasks to individuals as well as to a group. So you can assign a department as a group, or you can assign different individuals into a certain group. So you could have an executive group, you could have a departmental group, however you want to do it.
Excellent. Thank you, Lynn. Another question that came in, do the users all get the same dashboard? Oh, this is a great question. So is there one global dashboard for everybody who's on the Adaptive Insights platform, or can they be customized?
I can take that one.
Go ahead.
They could totally be customized. So you could have more than one dashboard. They could be geared towards different teams, and even within each dashboard, you can have multiple tabs within there, and those can be customized as well.
And I noticed each section has its own top-level dashboard, right? Right, Chris?
Yeah. So you could assign a default tab. So when you drop into a dashboard, you drop into a specific tab.
Yeah, it's awesome functionality. All right, I'm not seeing too many more questions. We got a couple minutes left. Make sure to drop your question in the Q&A if you want to ask a question. We still got a bunch of people on the call. We're happy that you made it all the way through. For those CPAs on the call today, I hope you answered your polling questions. All right, I'm going to move on to a little bit of contact information. If we still continue to get Q&A questions, we're here to answer them. I'll take this time to thank our audience for their participation today. We do these webinars for you, and we hope that you see significant benefit in the content that we're programming. There will be a recording of this webinar made available to you in 1 or 2 weeks. It takes a little bit of time to process. You'll automatically get an email with the deck, the presentation deck, a copy of that, as well as a recording of the webinar. I'll take this opportunity also to say a huge thank you to Chris Adamski and Lynne Jenkins, our co-practice managers, for their 5 steps to prepare for the budget that you should be taking right now to prepare for your FY'21 budget. I'll thank Rich DiPalma for his great overview of the adaptive solution and why you might want to turn to BSP to support your adaptive needs. And a very special thank you and a round of applause to Jay Baier for his time today in helping our community discuss these important topics. All right, I think that's going to close it up for us today. We appreciate you all, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar. Thank you so much.